Black people, we must stop misdiagnosing our collective condition because if our diagnoses are flawed, then all of our liberating remedies that stems from them will also be flawed. We currently have a segment of our communities that are insisting that the reason why many black people now speaks negatively about our own racial group and favorably about our oppressors is because of the Willie Lynch slave syndrome. We have another segment of our communities saying that it's because we're suffering from the Stockholm syndrome. However, both of these diagnoses are absolutely wrong. They are flawed. And as long as we continue functioning based upon flawed diagnosis, all of our liberating strategies will also be flawed. Not because many people believe the same things to be true doesn't make them true. It most often means that they've all received the same false information and no one bothered to fact check the information to find out was it true or not. We must function based on what's actually true in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are required in order to liberate ourselves from white oppression. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach African proverb. I will therefore not be silent in the face of ignorance, especially given that is that ignorance that prevents our liberation. The truth is that our collective condition, wherein which many of us now places the interests of the white society above our own interests, has nothing to do with a silly slave syndrome myth. That silly myth presents what would in fact be the least effective method used for controlling generations of millions of people. It's simply not how true brainwashing is achieved. Not at all. True brainwashing requires a system that is being constantly reapplied and reinforced upon the collective minds of a targeted population in order to remain effective. If not, its effectiveness would lessen with each new generation, not continuing or even worsening as we've been witnessing amongst our own people. Our collective condition also has nothing to do with the Stockholm syndrome. According to the U.S. Journal of Mental Health and Psychiatry, the Stockholm syndrome is a natural occurrence that sometimes happens when a hostage develops a psychological alliance with his or her captors during captivity. Our condition is not a natural occurrence. It's a deliberately created condition. Before I disclose the truth of our collective condition, allow me to demonstrate that millions of black people are not now perceiving our oppressors based upon an accurate interpretation of their history or their history shared between us and them. Throughout history, the oppressors have demonstrated an almost total disregard for the human lives of other racial groups. They've also demonstrated an entrenched predisposition for brutal racism that is matched only by their proclivity for deceit, greed, and hunger for power. They alone are the most narcissistic and the group most predisposed to racism. Their history is consumed by unrivaled racism. All other races have been made their enemies or their victims. Their subjugation, murder, and exploitation of all other races are unparalleled. There has never been a time in human history where of which the oppressors have not either exploited millions of people and have contributed either directly or indirectly to the misery and suffering and deaths of millions of people. The oppressors have in fact often demonstrated an almost total disregard for the human lives of other racial groups. Against people of color, the oppressors have committed crimes against humanity, including slavery and genocide. While labeling all other groups as being savages, the oppressors have in fact been the most brutally savage throughout history. And they haven't changed. Quiet as is kept and underreported, most violent crimes are still in fact fact committed by the oppressors. The hidden reality is that in the U.S., most violent crimes are in fact committed by the oppressor's racial group. Most mass shooters, serial killers, cops killers are in fact members of the oppressor's racial group. The oppressors are also more likely to murder a loved one for financial gain. The oppressors are also more likely to engage in hate crimes. The oppressors are more likely to commit matricide and patricide, that's a killing of parents. Because they control the flow of information, they've kept these facts away from the public. And no group has unalived more innocent black people throughout history than the oppressors have. They've in fact unalived more innocent black people throughout history than all other racial groups combined have done so. Yet, in spite of this brutally horrific history and ongoing reality, to the contrary, millions of black people now reveres our oppressors and perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies. When you look at the facts as they truly are, it's clear to see that millions of black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the history shared between our two racial groups. This profound hypocrisy, this profound contradiction exists because through the white society's monopoly over information and media images that are fed into our minds, they've given themselves an inaccurate, favorable image makeover. And they've also shifted our collective aggressions away from their society and redirected against ourselves. Most people don't understand how information and media images shapes our collective mindset. The information and media images fed into a society tells us who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. They tell us who we should trust and who we should not trust. Because the oppressors controls all of the information and media images that are fed into our society and into our collective minds, this allows them to shape our collective mindset in ways that benefits their white society. By constantly feeding us false white exalting narratives and media images, they've literally given their racial group an elaborate, favorable image makeover within the minds of many black people. And by constantly subjecting us to receiving only the fraudulent, worst narratives about ourselves and negatively distorted media depictions of ourselves, they've turned many of us against our own people. This is not a silly conspiracy theory. This science of controlling targeted populations through the information and media images that are repetitively fed to their minds is a true and well-proven social science. While studying about the group minds of large populations, white social scientists and white mass manipulation experts discovered this phenomenon. They learned that they could manipulate the minds and control the behaviors of targeted populations by the information and media images presented to the targets. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the input of contents that are fed into the minds of people, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe and even how they will behave. People are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving them certain information and media images every so often, and over time, you can persuade an entire generation towards an applied objective. People are easily controlled and manipulated by the information that they receive about themselves, especially when they're unaware that the information has been distorted to invoke specific responses from them. It doesn't matter if the information presented is untrue. Most people will act accordingly upon the information because they've all received the same disinformation. Sadly, to our own detriment, they fool many of us to believe that our collective condition is caused by silly slave syndrome myth and or the Stockholm syndrome. Those flawed narratives are being used to keep us distracted from learning the truth, this disclosed truth. because they know that as long as they keep our understandings of our plight and conditions flawed, then all of our liberating strategies that stems from those flawed understandings will also be flawed. Brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up to our reality. As long as they keep us in this condition, we can be ruled over forever. Now, in closing, the greatest mental enslavement they have upon our people is their false religion they impose upon us. Many of our people say we should do nothing, just wait for Jesus to come and save us, not realizing just how ignorant, profoundly ignorant such a statement is. Brothers and sisters, one love and peace.